Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. In today's episode, I chat with Katie Dunn. Katie spent 25 plus years financing over $10 billion in commercial real estate for various banks and financial institutions before pivoting full-time to focus on her global angel investment portfolio, where she helps founders get funded faster. Now, after realizing how fascinating, thought-provoking, and nimble the startup world was, she decided to bet on herself. Let's go check out her story. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Katie Dunn. Katie is an angel investor and partner of Power to Pitch, which is a company helping founders raise their first round of capital and get directly matched with investors. Now, I learned about Katie after she had a great post on LinkedIn about pivoting from commercial real estate into this new space. So I'm excited to have her on to share her story. Hi, Katie. So thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So now, before we get into your story, and like I mentioned, when I really do kind of stalk this Great Resignation thread on LinkedIn, and so you had a great post. And before we get into that, I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about your background and where you call home.
Sure. So I was born in Chicago and grew up in Minneapolis. Very good little Midwestern girl. Moved to Chicago after college, and then was there for a couple of years and moved to New York. I just wanted to do something different and test my abilities in the big city. And then I left there for a little while and went back to Chicago, lived in London for a little bit, Washington, D.C., and now back in New York, but officially in East Hampton since the pandemic. So back in the woods again, like I was in Minnesota.
Oh, very nice. And, I'm a Midwest guy too. So, all good Midwestern values. I love that. I love that. And so now, what are some of the things that you've been passionate about professionally?
Well, I grew up in real estate. Both of my parents were in real estate. So I loved real estate and doing deals. I was always good at math as well. And so I ended up being a real estate finance person and loved putting a deal together and seeing all the people that could come together and getting to know all the people that would have to make a deal come to fruition. I loved the history behind it, why something was where it was, how, what the original vision for something was. It was just, it's fun to have a tangible asset that you see, touch, feel.
No, that's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about, your work journey and what's been working well in the environments that you've been a part of. Clearly you were interested in real estate from the beginning. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
I started out working with brokers and, didn't really see myself doing that. I liked what they were doing, but there weren't a lot of women doing that. And so I saw these people coming in, they were the ones that had the money. And I thought, okay, that I can do. I can sell money, even though, money's the same everywhere. It's always green. But I pivoted onto the lending side fairly early in my career. The things that where I really thrived, I think, is when I could solve a big problem or take on a big challenge and run that and show off my abilities in coordinating a team. So that's what I liked. I liked the taking on the big thing and being the problem solver, being a fixer, if you will.
No, I like that. And so like we were mentioned earlier, you've had this extensive career in this commercial real estate finance space. So what, other than, solving those big problems, what are some of the things that, drew you to the industry? And maybe what is a little known fact about the space as a whole?
Well, like I said, the initial draw was really my parents and seeing them both work in real estate and being able to drive down the street and kind of point to things I thought was cool that they worked on. And, there's a lot of fun things about the business. One of the best things was travel. I did deals all over the country and went to big cities, small cities. And, a lot of times it was just a day trip and it was very difficult and, just a grind of rushing to see as much as you can and then get back on the plane. But there were also like the times when, I got to go to Seattle for the first time and I stayed for the weekend on my own dime and got, traveled around it. Like that kind of stuff is super cool. The people are great. I think also people, it just made me really good at underwriting people, places, and things. There's so much analysis that goes into looking at a real estate deal. You're looking at the tenants that are in those buildings and how they're operating, what they're doing. And it gave me the ability, I think, which we'll kind of get to this, but how to assess a business, how to look at somebody and do I trust them? Do I not trust them? Do I, really trust my gut, figure out how to tie into my gut on things.
Yeah, no, that's great. A little bit of gamesmanship as well. I could imagine as well throughout that whole process. No, so that's great to hear. And look, so this show is, at least as of now, is talking about kind of people who have left their jobs during the pandemic. And so naturally we're going to talk a little bit about COVID. And so March of 2020, we'll take you back to that time. The world really comes to a standstill. And so talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected you.
Yeah, it was crazy. So it was 5 years before the pandemic started. I had bought a house in East Hampton and would come on the weekends out here from the city, work 5 days a week in my office, and then come out here to my little respite with the bugs and the trees and the birds and turkeys and deer and all that. And so I was super lucky in that I had this place to flee to in the pandemic. And, I came out on that Thursday that it was declared a pandemic and had my computer with me and started, working from home. I had a little bubble of people, which was great. And Zoom was amazing to connect with family and friends afar and making sure people were good. So I felt very, very lucky on the personal front and like protected, if you will. I know that's not the same for so many people. So I feel very lucky in that respect.
Yeah. And how did the pandemic really start to affect your relationship with your job?
That was the really tough part. And it was, to be honest, it was awful. We were like I said, we're worrying about commercial real estate. So that means office buildings, that means retail buildings, it means multifamily buildings. And not only do you want to make sure that the people in there are protected, but we had to protect the bank too, because if people aren't paying rent, then the owner of the building isn't paying the mortgage, which means the bank isn't getting paid their money. So that you have that side, and then you have the side of people are dying every day. Thousands of people are dying every day. There's so many people that can't go to work, that work hourly jobs in these places, in these retail shops, for example, of buildings that I've financed. And so it was very difficult for me from a mental perspective. Like I'm being forced, I'm trying to do my job. I shouldn't say being forced. I'm trying to do my job and protect my job, my livelihood, my responsibilities to the bank, but at the same time, watching the world crumble and struggle. It was just really hard to work out and, figure it out.
Yeah. And many, during that time, many companies really shifted to this remote work, right? This concept of remote work. And now at the time we're recording this is, it's no more of a concept. Like that's a thing, right? Mm-hmm. And things are likely going to be hybrid going forward. And so how did this shift from a working standpoint affect your business as a whole? Because like you mentioned, commercial real estate, a lot of it we're dealing with physical properties, right? And so how did this really affect the business? We have folks not coming into the office. And so tell us a little bit about how these, future of work and work style given the business were starting to clash.
Yeah, it was, it's really difficult. I mean, you have these people don't need as much office space anymore. So the values of office buildings, it's really office that's probably going to be the most affected long-term, I think, in that people just aren't going to go to the office. They're not going to sign leases for 20,000 square feet. They're going to sign leases for 5,000 square feet and have people just hot desk or hoteling, that kind of concept. And that's going to really hurt office values. It just is. And there's people that have moved to suburban locations and taken on cheaper space. I mean, you look at New York City rents, they're enormous. That's a huge expense for a company in New York to have Park Avenue office space, right? So if they can save money that somehow by getting out of that lease, they're going to do it, because if the people aren't coming, and you're going to, it's such to retain talent, you need to offer that flexibility, because people have realized it's not so much about their job. I mean, so you're doing and talking to all these people. It's not always all about your job. It's about your happiness, your mental health, your family, what other things are important to you. So people will leave their job if they are forced to be in an office 5 days a week, even if they're getting paid all the money in the world. So it's going to be really tough for the commercial real estate industry to weather this over the next, especially in major cities, over the next coming years.
Yeah, no, I agree. I saw an interesting stat a couple of weeks ago that was like 456 billion in the real estate market. That's how much, potentially is at risk of loss because folks aren't coming back to the office. And we have certain cities. I mean, New York is one of them, where we have, public officials almost kind of drawn a very hard line on come back. And that I think that's a double-edged sword, so to your point, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Now looking back during the COVID time, what is really one thing that you wish you would have done differently during the pandemic?
I think I spun my wheels at work too much. I think I stressed out too much. I think I got into my own head and really made things more difficult than they needed to be for myself with regards to work. But I will say I was Zooming with a group of friends that I had met through this executive education program right before the pandemic. And one of the women said during, this is, still like March, the first couple of weeks of COVID, she said we probably thought COVID was going to be a month.
Right,
at that point, she
Yeah.
said, we should really think about where we want to be coming out of this. Like we have a second to take a break and to be in our homes and can't do anything or go anywhere. So, what do we want to think about in terms of our health, in terms of our career? What do we want to learn? Where do you want to be coming out of this? And I really took that to heart. And I think that really drove my journey into where I am today, because I looked around and said, is this really what I want to be doing? Maybe I can figure out a way to pivot out of this. And it was, I give her a ton of credit. And I think about that stuff a lot now. And I have for the years. Like, I think I did a LinkedIn post about this. Like, where do you want to be in 6 months? Like 6 months is a pretty bite-sized thing. You can think about like, if I want to be there, what do I do today to get there? And people talk about that kind of stuff all the time, writing letters to your future self, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, for whatever reason, when my friend said it to me in that Zoom, it just really resonated and I got it and it clicked. And I think that's why I am where I am.
Yeah, no, and you clicked in a major way, right? Because, so look, after being in your last role for around 8.5 years, you left in May of 22. So, ultimately, why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
It just wasn't serving me anymore. I think at the core of it, the mission that I was doing, which was really making rich men and probably rich white men richer than they already are. That was what it really came down to. Mm-hmm. Didn't resonate with me. And I had started doing some angel investing in the years before. And I was in particular working with one company, which is an Irish spirits company, doing some stuff on the side on the weekends and nights with that. And there would be all these great wins, like these little wins, whether we got into this liquor store in Ireland, or we're going to be in an article in the Irish Times, or these little tiny things that are such a big deal for a startup company. And I had this up and down of my job was keeping me down low, and then I'd get these WhatsApp chats from, messages from my founder in Ireland. And it would just like give me to this big high. And I was like, there's something here. Like the fluctuation is not good for anybody's mental health. Right. But it was like, wait a second, these kind of peaks of the good news were really, I was like, there's something else out here. There's something else I can do. There's something else I can be. And so I really explored more of how could I make myself make a living? Because quitting my job or leaving my job and not having income, it was not an option. So how do I figure out how to jump with a net that's going to have some income and continue doing what I feel like I can be helpful with and supportive with and have fun with and be excited about every day.
Yeah. And so what were some of the things that you started to really learn about yourself throughout this process, right? You talk about the highs and lows and, you get enough of those and it's like, the highs are pulling you now, right? So what did you start to learn about you?
I think I started to get my confidence back a little bit, and like there'd be little things I would help out with, and the founder, he'd be so excited and be so grateful for that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, wait, this is awesome. Like I think I wasn't necessarily getting that in my job, and I realized I knew a lot more about kind of business strategy, how to assess financials. Like the skills I learned underwriting real estate and underwriting companies and underwriting people for so long, it had a lot of value outside of just doing that. And that was a big thing. I took a chance. Like I jumped and there wasn't a net, and I figured out how to make some other stuff happen. So it's been, it's been really interesting. It's been really interesting. And I think that taking that chance has given me a ton of confidence. I learned the power of LinkedIn, networking, and just reaching out to people. Like if you generally ask somebody for 20 minutes, half an hour of their time, that you're interested in what they're doing and how they're doing it, they'll give it to you. And you can learn so much, and then they'll connect you with other people and other people, that power is really effective.
Absolutely. I mean that, I think about this show a lot and LinkedIn, and look, by no means are they a sponsor of this at all, but I wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for LinkedIn, because just the ability to connect with folks in such a direct and meaningful way, it's much different than an Instagram or a Facebook, right? But, you get a chance to see, what, if your profile is nice, right? What I'm about, I get to see what you're about. And then we talk a little bit more, and it's not, yes, there can be some salesy things on there, but I think I've made some really meaningful connections on there. So I couldn't agree with you more. Mm-hmm. And so now you've talked about making this leap and taking that chance on yourself. So what has happened since you left?
So I kind of have three things that I focus my time on. One is angel investing and looking at new deals for my portfolio. The other is Outcast Brands, which is the Irish spirits company that I still am very involved with. Our gin, Blood Monkey Gin, is here in the U.S. We launched our second spirit, which is a rum called Two Shores Rum on International Rum Day in July in Ireland. And that's done really well. We're hoping to bring that over to the U.S. in the spring of 2023. And then the third thing, which was quite a surprise, but it happened really quickly, and I felt like it was real kismet, is a business called Power to Pitch. And I met my partner in that business through one of my founders. She had hired my partner to work on a pitch for her. And my partner she's just a powerhouse. She started her first business in college, and to raise money for it, she did pitch competitions, and she won 22 of 23 pitch competitions. So she knows what it takes to write a pitch. And so she and I just started talking even like earlier in 2022. We kind of talk once a week, once every 2 weeks, just about what we were doing, what we were seeing in the angel investing world, and just chatting about stuff. And when I left my job, we kind of looked at each other, and she said, "Do you want to do this business with me?" and bring the investor perspective, and I can bring the storyteller perspective. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So it's been awesome and just the most positive and fun thing. And we work with the greatest founders. So it's really fantastic.
No, that is awesome to hear. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that. But I guess for the listeners who may not know what angel investing is, tell us, what is an angel investor? And if someone's looking to become one, right, what are maybe the top 3 things that they should consider?
Sure. So an angel investor is usually a single person that is using their own money to invest in startups, and usually at a very early stage. So it's the most risky point in the journey of a startup. So the first thing that they should consider is that they have money to lose, because there's very likely that you're going to lose on some of the bets that you make. And then you want to grow a meaningful portfolio and have a few companies, because hopefully there's a unicorn or 2 or 10 in there. The second thing is, it's really all about the founder, being able to connect with the person that's running the company, that you trust them, that they're going to ask you for help, that they're going to be honest with you, that they're going to be resilient and be able to pivot and solve problems, because inevitably there are going to be enormous challenges as you build a business. And then the other thing I would say that you should consider is, don't get caught up in FOMO. There's so many things that you can, like, oh my gosh, everybody else is jumping on this one deal. It has to speak to you. It has to speak to your gut. And it's about trusting your gut.
Yeah, no, I remember when I first learned about angel investing, I used to see the phrase often, and I didn't know what it was. And then as I dug into it more, I was like, oh, wow, I'm an angel investor,
Right.
because
I know you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've gotten into a few things through Start Engine, which has been nice. So yeah, so I'm glad you shared that. And now, talking a little bit more about Power to Pitch, tell us, and maybe would love to get, your founder on here to talk a little bit about that too, because one of the things that I've noticed for the show is that a lot of folks who have left to start their own companies. And so I think that insight from someone who, hey, if you're going to start your own company and now you need to pitch for funding, maybe, 22 out of 23 is a pretty good track record. So we'll need to connect with her at some point. But tell us a little bit about, Power to Pitch, some of the things that you all do, and maybe some success stories.
Sure. Yeah. So you're right, Brian. I mean, I think the time that we're into now, not only the Great Resignation, but now looking like we're going into recession, there's always so many businesses created during these times. And there's a lot to consider. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to find the resources, where the resources are, how to pitch, how to find grants, which I love grants. We really encourage a lot of people that we work with to go for grants, whether it be a pitch competition or just applying online, whatever it is, because that's non-dilutive capital that's not taking away from your equity, and you can just use that money to further your business. And knowing the right people to talk to is another big thing. I mean, we work with people that have a great idea, but don't know how to execute on it. And it's been fantastic. We've had some great successes. A lot of them I can't talk about because there's a couple NDA things, but we had 2 women that are co-founders together that are actually family that did a huge pitch competition and came out very successful. They won almost $100,000. There's a founder that I worked with privately before I even knew Kat. My partner's Kat Weaver, by the way, and Power to Pitch. So before I even knew Kat, and then I referred her to Kat before Kat and I had teamed up. And she had never won a pitch competition before. Now she's won like 3. She's just did a news TV show the other day. And, there's like about getting these kinds of exposures. There's other people that we've gotten in front of VCs that are getting term sheets. And so it's really exciting to see people's dreams come true. I mean, I always say, if I had the $1 billion idea, I would do it myself. but I don't. So I can support those that do. And I can do that in a couple different ways through Power to Pitch and also through my angel investment as well. So it's really fun.
No, that's awesome to hear. And now you had mentioned some of the angel investing companies that you're talking. Was it Blood Monkey Gin?
Blood Monkey Gin.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about them.
Yeah, it's different. It's not your typical London Dry style, so it's not going to taste like the Bombay Sapphire, Tanqueray, or even like Aviation, Ryan Reynolds company. We based it on the original recipe of gin, which is called Genevieve and comes from the Dutch. And the name, which is people always want to know, what does blood monkey mean? It comes from an old naval term where the rogue sailors would go and steal the grog or the booze out of the barrels that belonged to the captain and the senior officers of the ship. And so that was called bleeding the monkey. The barrel was the monkey and they would bleed the monkey and steal it. So we were just sort of a little cheeky nod to the old naval term. So yeah, it's really fun. It's really different. We're in some great bars and restaurants and liquor stores in New York City. We're also online. You can find us at bloodmonkeygin.com and buy it online in the US. We have a really cool black bottle, so it stands out on the shelf. And I think it's really special.
Oh, definitely. I'll have to give that a try. I'm a gin guy. I'm a Bombay Sapphire. I'm a Bombay Sapphire guy. So,
Okay.
I'm always into trying new ones. So yeah, I'll definitely give them a look. And you'd mentioned, was there a rum brand too?
Yeah. The rum is called Two Shores.
Okay.
We took rum from Panama that's been aged in 8-year-old bourbon barrels in Panama, and brought it to Ireland and then aged it in 4 different Irish whiskey barrels in Galway. And so we have 4 different kind of flavors, if you will, that are very unique, very different. And they really, because been in those whiskey barrels, they almost are like a whiskey. Like people try it and they say, this is not what I thought rum would be. It's not your white Bacardi. It's golden rum. So it's just got a different flavor profile from it. And that's what we at Outcast, we aspire to do things that are a little bit different and unique. We want everything to be sipping. I should have mentioned that Blood Monkey is good enough to be drunk neat. You can sip it on its own, maybe a little bit of ice. And it's, which generally people don't do with gin as a rule, but it's been distilled 3 times, so it's really smooth. And then the rum is just, I love it. My favorite is the Oloroso sherry cask finish flavor. And it's just really unique and lovely. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Good deal. Add those to the list. So now a part of the show, what I always like to do is really get some advice from the people who I bring on. And so when we think about, this moment that we're in now, people could be in positions where they're looking to find something new, whether within their company or potentially even outside. And so for those folks, what is the piece of advice that maybe you would give to our listeners who may have a similar experience to yours, but really don't know what to do next?
I would say talk to other people, get outside of the bubble that you're in. Don't just sit there and wallow in your the stress or the negativity that you're in your current situation. Try and get out of that and talk to other people, reach out to people on LinkedIn or talk to your friends or ask for introductions. And, something will speak to you, something will come out and figure it out. I mean, I remember that kind of during my time and being unhappy in my role, I was talking to my dad and he gave me some really good advice, which I really resonated as well, which was don't do anything rash. The universe will tell you when it's time to jump and when it's time to go. And it did for me. But I do think that I had really prepared myself well. I was taking a lot of phone calls, taking a lot of Zoom meetings, talking to a lot of people, trying to educate myself in other things and other ways so that when I was ready to leave, there would be something there for me. And it worked out. So that's what I would say is try and prepare yourself to be ready.
I like that. And those are wise words from your father as well. And now, what do you think employers could be doing better to support employees in this workspace? And you could speak to those either in the real estate space or broadly. I know your business is very fast paced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I think that I think recognizing how much people work and how much effort people put in is important, and to not burn people out. And I think there's a lot of situations that I've seen in my career, been in my career, where you want that person to stay in the role they're in because they're good at it, and they're you don't want to rock the boat because you need the machine to keep going. But I think you need to recognize when people are burned out and get them help, whether it be in terms of resources, or making them take vacations where they are not allowed to use their email or take work phone calls. I think that is really important, having backups, and don't just be performative. Like a pizza lunch once a week doesn't cut it anymore. Really listening to people and getting them help. And I think there's so much emphasis on profits when adding another $100,000 analyst to a team would really benefit the overall mental health and productivity of the team. Just do that. Just hire the person rather than, it's not in the long term, it's going to pay off and not cut into the bottom line as much as they think.
No, that's great. And now as you look at where you're going from a future standpoint, right? There's a lot on the horizon. What type of impact are you hoping to have in this next chapter of your professional life?
I love this question. This is so important to me. And this is like exactly like this is really clear to me, in that I really want to help to, like I said before, we were, most of my career was making white men richer. So now I want to invest in women and people of color and support them in their businesses and make them richer. That is my goal, to make a difference in that respect. And, I think being able to invest in that way, there's so many stats out there, like investing in women, you get better returns. They're more thoughtful about how they spend their money. They have so much bigger success rates, but they just need the access to the funds. I also feel really want to help other women investors learn about investing, learn about creating your own wealth, how to save money, how to invest it, how to be financially independent, I think is so important as well. So that's really my next chapter, I think, is focusing on that stuff.
That's awesome. And I wish you all the best and much success in that regard. Well, look, Katie, this has been great. I appreciate you responding to my message on LinkedIn and coming on, but I also want to just thank you for taking some time to speak with me today. It was great to, learn about power to pitch and everything that kind of led to this moment and some of the other investments that you're doing, and would love for you to share, where our listeners can support you and your companies.
Yeah, sure. So powertopitch.com. If there's any startups out there that are looking for help in fundraising and pitching, we have a apply here on our banner. So you can see that. You can learn more about that there. You can go to my LinkedIn. It's Katie Dunn. You'll see me. You can reach out to me there. I'm happy to take messages and chat with people. And if there are my personal angel investing thesis is I'd like the founder to be a woman, person of color, or LGBTQ. And I invest primarily in consumer packaged goods, spirits industry, and tech. So those are the kind of deals I'm looking for personally.
Like that. Well, all right. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank my guest, Katie Dunn, for joining us today. I'll be sure to share her information in our show notes along with, Blood Monkey Gin, Two Shores, everything, Power to Pitch. We'll put that all in the show notes for you all to check out. So I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next time. And Katie, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.